For those counting along, marks day 27 of the government shutdown, second longest in American history, but the first time that Americans have faced losing food benefits as a consequence of the shutdown. About 1 in 8 Americans depend on SNAP benefits, formerly known as food stamps, to help pay for their groceries. It comes out to about $177 per person each month. That's the average. And there is a contingency fund for emergencies, such as this one. But the Trump administration says the money is reserved for things like helping people in disasters, so no good at the moment. Some states, though, are trying to step in, take action on their own in response. In California, for example, Governor Gavin Newsom has called in the National Guard to help food banks sort produce and box meals as they anticipate higher demand. And over in Virginia, the governor declared a state of emergency to make state funding available to support food programs. Joining us now to talk about all of this is Gina Plata-Niño, an interim director at the nonprofit Food Research and Action Center. She looks and studies at SNAP. Gina, thank you very much for being here. Give us the state of things. How serious is this situation?
Incredibly serious. The people relying on this benefit are our most vulnerable. For the most part, they're making less than $1,000 a month, right? This means that they may not be able to pay their rent. They may not be able to pay childcare. They may not be able to have food on the table for their children when they come home. And this will set them back. These are individuals who are living paycheck to paycheck, veterans, older adults, people with disabilities who are counting on this fund. It's, this program is supposed to be supplemental, but for many people, this is their sole food budget.
So, Gina, this is the second longest government shutdown. The longest was 2018 to 2019. That one lasted 35 days. What happened with SNAP benefits then?
The secretary then was able to utilize appropriated funding to issue benefits earlier. So individuals got their benefits, their December benefits, their January benefits, and then they got their February benefits a couple of days after. So it allowed individuals to be able to plan, but it still had a detrimental effect, loss of faith in government, because individuals still weren't sure in terms of communication and whether March benefits were going to come around. So it's really uncertain. The unnecessary chaos that it causes on individuals' lives when they're depending on these funds.
What do you make of the USDA saying they're not going to release emergency funds to cover the SNAP shortfall? And if they were to release the funds, would it cover everything?
It would cover a portion of it. But USDA also has other types of access. They have the authority to do so. They utilized it for WIC, where they funded it for $300 million. There's Section 32, which has billions of dollars as well to be able to cover the $2 billion or $3 billion that would be needed in order to cover whatever's now left in the contingency funding. But the Nutrition Act is clear. The Secretary has the authority, has the contingency fund that Congress gives to her to be able to utilize it at such a time as this, which is the entitlement program, so that benefits could be funded and not delayed.
So, Gina, has the contingency funding, because that's $5 billion, has that been used in a case like this? Because the USDA in this memo says that funding is really just for disaster situations. And then in this memo, they do call out Democrats specifically, saying that they need to open up the government in order for people to get their food stamps. What do you make of that?
I say this is a man-made disaster that could be easily avoided. Regardless of what's going on in the shutdown, that's why Congress gives, both parties, gives the Secretary the authority to be able to utilize this contingency funds, and they're currently using them to pay administrative funding. Because remember, the benefit amounts, that always comes from the government, and USDA and the states cover 50 and 50% the administrative costs. So that contingency fund is currently being used for that. So there's no reason for them to not be able to utilize the rest of the funding to cover SNAP benefits and utilize other Section 32 or, CCC funding in order to make sure that people's benefits get there on time.
So what do you say to people who say that this is a political move?
People are not chess pieces, right? These are individuals who are not going to, their landlord's not going to say, oh, I'm sorry that the Secretary of Agriculture is not utilizing her authority to be able to issue funds. People are going to have to make hard choices. And it would just, again, remind individuals that it's a contract that you enter when you sign that application, that you will receive these benefits. It's never happened in the history, and we just don't want this to continue. And so we really are pushing for the Secretary to utilize her authority to be able to issue these funds regardless of what's going on with the shutdown.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, the USDA says those funds are only for disaster situations like Hurricane Melissa, so that's why they say they're not using those funds. Gina Plata-Niño, thank you so much. That was today's By the Way.